There is an invisible tragedy unfolding in plain sight. In every restaurant, every suburban backyard barbecue, and every holiday gathering where commitment has replaced connection. It is the subtle, yet devastating, psychological schism between the man who can genuinely smile and the man who has learned the exhaustive art of pretending. We are not speaking here of superficial happiness or situational joy, but of the deep, unburdened resonance of the soul, the kind of contentment that requires no performance and demands no applause. The observation is stark, almost cinematic. The single man, unattached to the monumental machinery of the social contract, often carries a lightness, an effortless presence that manifests as a genuine, uncomplicated expression of ease. His smile reaches his eyes, crinkling the corners with an honesty that is almost shocking in its simplicity. Then there is the married man, often successful, often outwardly content, yet his smile possesses a quality of immense effort. It is deployed, not expressed. It is a social tool, a polished facade fixed rigidly in place, a perfect geometry of teeth and upturned lips that never quite manages to reach the deep interior architecture of his being. He is pretending, and the performance is exhausting him from the inside out. To understand this profound divide, we must journey into the architecture of the human soul, as mapped by the incomparable Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who taught us that the greatest conflict a man faces is not with the world, but with the hidden territories of his own psyche. Jung understood that every man wears a mask, a sophisticated shell designed for commerce, interaction, and survival within the communal structure. He called this mask the persona. The persona is not inherently bad. It is necessary. It is the diplomat that negotiates between the chaotic inner world and the orderly demands of the outer world. But when a man enters the high-stakes, long-duration theater of marriage, the persona ceases to be a functional tool and transforms into a rigid prison, an identity contract signed in invisible ink that demands conformity at the cost of authenticity. The single man, by definition, retains a degree of psychic flexibility. He may wear a suit at the office, but when he returns home, he is free to discard the mask, to explore the messy, contradictory, and incomplete aspects of his true self. He can integrate the full spectrum of his desires, his shadows, and his doubts without immediate reference to a pre-established domestic narrative. This freedom allows for a more integrated, and therefore more genuine, expression of self, culminating in that unburdened smile. The married man, however, often finds himself forced to permanently affix his persona. Marriage, particularly within traditional Western archetypes, is one of society's most powerful institutional demands for conformity. The world does not merely ask the married man to be a man, it requires him to be the husband, the provider, the stable pillar. These archetypal roles are enormous, demanding, and crucially, they are often narrowly defined by cultural expectations that predate his actual personality. The persona he adopted for courtship, the charming, stable, confident, future-oriented man, must now be maintained 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, not just for his partner, but for his children, his in-laws, his neighbors, and the entire watchful community. This is the genesis of the great pretense. The married man smiles because the role demands that he appear happy, secure, and successful. He must project stability, even when his inner life is characterized by turbulence and confusion. He must project confidence, even when he doubts the path he is on. He must project control, even when he feels profoundly out of control of his own narrative trajectory. This journey into the hidden structures of the mind demands a moment of shared reality. Tell us right now, where in the world are you experiencing this truth? Which city allows you to witness this deep human drama of the soul? The psychological cost of this performance is astronomical. Jung warned that the greatest danger of the persona is not that we deceive others, but that we begin to deceive ourselves. The man who wears the mask for too long forgets what his original face looked like. The married man who pretends happiness gradually loses the capacity to distinguish between genuine joy and successful performance. He becomes alienated from his own authentic experience, trading the volatile but vital truth of his inner self for the predictable, exhausting safety of the social facade. Consider the immense weight of the suppressed self. Within every man lurks the shadow, the repository of all the instincts, desires, weaknesses, and qualities that the ego and the persona have deemed unacceptable, unworthy, or incompatible with the chosen social role. For the married man, the shadow often holds the unlived life, the desire for true solitude, the urge for radical change, the impulse toward irresponsibility, the need for emotional vulnerability that the role of the pillar forbids. The single man has more room to negotiate with his shadow. He can occasionally indulge the dark, the messy, or the reckless part of himself in private, allowing the pressure to dissipate. He can integrate those challenging elements into a more fluid identity. The married man, however, seals the shadow off completely, sometimes for decades, fearing that if even a sliver of that repressed energy were to leak out, the entire structure of the marriage and his social standing, built upon the foundation of his perfect persona, would crumble. This is why he pretends. The smile of the married man is often a psychic dam, holding back a torrent of unexpressed doubts, unmet needs, and the crushing weight of existential exhaustion. When you see him laugh at a party, notice the rigidity around his neck, the way his shoulders seem slightly hunched under an invisible load. That is the physical manifestation of the psychic energy required to maintain the lie. He is performing the role of the integrated, contented man, but internally a deep and often fatal fracture is setting in between the mask and the man. Jung called the process of becoming whole individuation, the lifelong task of integrating the various parts of the psyche, the persona, the shadow, the anima, or animus, into a cohesive, authentic self. This process requires truth. It requires vulnerability. It requires the courage to dismantle the false structures built up over years. But for the married man trapped in the persona of stability, authenticity is not a spiritual goal. It is a direct threat to his entire domestic existence. To drop the pretense is to invite chaos, conflict, and potential dissolution. And the fear of that dissolution is often far greater than the pain of the lie. The single man's smile, therefore, represents the proximity of his outer expression to his inner reality. He has the luxury of being less individuated by society, allowing him to be more individuated in his soul. He is not forced to filter his internal state through the demanding lens of an external institution. If he is tired, he can show tiredness. If he is restless, he can explore restlessness. His self is permitted to be dynamic, evolving, and incomplete, which paradoxically makes his expression of contentment, when it arrives, fully earned and authentically embodied. The performance of strength is what truly drains the married man. He is expected to navigate emotional, financial, and relational storms without betraying fear or inadequacy. This expectation is often internalized to such a degree that even when he is alone, he cannot stop the performance. He has become the audience and the actor simultaneously. His emotional life has been mortgaged to the stability of the institution. He cannot afford the vulnerability that true emotional honesty requires. He finds himself in a perpetual state of as if, I am perfectly happy, as if I know exactly what I am doing, as if I am still the adventurous, fully realized man I presented myself as years ago. This continuous suppression of the shadow and the authentic self leads to a state of chronic psychic fatigue. The exhaustion required to sustain the persona is the hidden engine of the married man's pretense. The moment he truly relaxes, the pressure builds, threatening to explode in unexpected ways, whether through chronic illness, sudden infidelity, or midlife crisis fueled by the desperate need to reclaim the unlived life. We must recognize that this pretense is a collaborative effort. The institution of marriage, as a unit of societal stability, often implicitly rewards the man who performs the role convincingly and subtly punishes the one who dares to be authentically messy. His partner, too, may have constructed her own persona around the image of the stable husband, and any disruption to that image is received not as authenticity, but as a betrayal of the stability she signed up for. The couple often enters into an unspoken contract of mutual pretense, where both parties agree to sustain the masks of the idealized couple, rather than face the complex, flawed, and often conflicting reality of two individuated souls attempting to coexist. The smile, therefore, is the most visible symptom of this interior psychological negotiation. When the single man smiles, he is acknowledging his experience. When the married man pretends, he is affirming his commitment to the social structure, even if that commitment is silently annihilating his own soul. He is sacrificing his inner truth on the altar of outer stability. He is choosing the safe harbor of the persona over the terrifying but essential journey of individuation. The weight of this performance is what keeps him tethered to the exhausting charade. The single man can afford to be honest because he has fewer material and relational dependencies tied to his facade. The married man faces the loss of property, family, routine, and status should his pretense fail. The stakes are geometrically higher, making the necessity of the mask absolute. He smiles because he must, not because he is. And that forced performed lightness is the core tragedy that Jung's insight illuminates. The foundation of genuine strength lies in the refusal to carry a burden that does not belong to you, and the ultimate burden is the necessity of appearing to be someone you are not. The single man, by default, carries less of the collective expectation, allowing his spirit to remain comparatively agile. The married man, conversely, carries the weight of history, tradition, and the entire domestic enterprise on his shoulders, forcing him to become a monolith, rigid and smiling, lest the entire weight come crashing down. This is the central paradox. The structure intended to provide ultimate security, marriage, often becomes the very mechanism that strips a man of his personal authenticity, forcing him to live perpetually at the surface, forever barred from the deep, complex truths that give life genuine meaning. He is performing the life he thinks he should live, and that exhausting disconnect is precisely what extinguishes the genuine light behind his eyes. We are navigating profound psychological terrain here, understanding the cost of conformity and the necessity of self-possession. The truth is that embracing the authentic self demands continuous dismantling of the false self. This path, though challenging, offers the only route to a genuine smile. It's time to choose authenticity over comfort, truth over appearance. Join this conversation right now. I want to see this truth reflected in the comments. Affirm your commitment to genuine presence by typing the phrase, "I release the persona." This is how we build a network of men committed to real depth. Subscribe instantly to access the essential knowledge we deliver every week, and hit the like button to ensure this vital information is shared with others who need to shed the burden of pretense. You need to know what happens next, because the cost of this pretense is not merely an exhausted smile. The neglected parts of the psyche don't simply fade away, they gain power in the darkness. Next, we will dismantle the inner life of the man who pretends, examining the dark forces that emerge when the shadow is violently suppressed for too long, revealing the spectacular psychological debt that society rarely discusses. Do not miss the critical continuation of this profound investigation. The true cost of the mask is not measured in effort, but in authenticity. We observe the initial startling contrast, the genuine quiet contentment radiating from the man unburdened by commitment, versus the labored, often overly loud performance of happiness put on by the man shackled to expectation. This contrast, which Carl Jung identified not merely as a sociological observation, but as a deep psychological schism, necessitates a descent into the architecture of the male soul and the immense pressure placed upon it by the institution of modern marriage. The married man, the pretender, is caught in the tyranny of the persona. The persona, in Jungian terms, is not just a mask. It is the compromise between the self and society, the official identity that a man adopts to fulfill his social roles: husband, father, provider, stable anchor. For the single man, this persona is fluid, adaptable, and less rigidly defined. He can experiment with his self, his external presentation changing based on his internal state. His life is an improvisation, and his smile is the genuine reflection of that spontaneous alignment. But for the married man, the persona hardens into a fortress. It must be impenetrable, reliable, and fundamentally unshakable. Society demands this of him. The wife, the children, the mortgage, the colleagues all depend on the stability and predictability of this persona. Therefore, any aspect of the true self that contradicts this rigid identity must be forcefully repressed. This is where the pretense begins, becoming an immense daily energy drain. Imagine trying to hold a complex, heavy sculpture above your head indefinitely. The strain is not visible to the casual observer, but the muscles underneath are screaming. This sculpture is the performance of the contented patriarch. He smiles because he must. He pretends because the consequences of dropping the mask, the shattering of the persona, are catastrophic. Not merely divorce, but the destruction of his social standing, the collapse of his financial security, and the psychological trauma of admitting that the life he built was constructed on a foundation of suppressed desire. He has invested years, decades even, into this identity, and to admit it as false is to admit the profound waste of his most precious resource, his lived life. This leads us to the shadow, the repository of everything the ego deems unacceptable, incompatible, or undesirable in the execution of the persona. The single man, having less stringent social boundaries, often engages with his shadow in manageable doses. He may travel impulsively, pursue risky hobbies, indulge in fleeting moments of irresponsibility, or maintain unconventional friendships. These are safety valves, ways of integrating the wild man or the poor eternus and the eternal boy into his daily life, allowing his self to breathe. The married man, however, is required to sterilize his existence. The persona demands the systematic eradication of the shadow, the impulse to wander, the desire for pure, unadulterated solitude, the urge to chase the unknown. All these deep, powerful psychic energies are walled off. The shadow does not disappear. It merely retreats into the basement of the psyche where it grows stronger, darker, and more hostile. The pretense, therefore, is not just smiling when he is unhappy. The pretense is living an externally moral and responsible life, while harboring an increasingly volatile, unacknowledged internal reservoir of rage, resentment, and unlived possibility. This is why the married man's pretense is so psychologically taxing. He is constantly fighting a civil war against himself. His ego, dedicated to maintaining the fortress of the persona, must dedicate monumental resources to keeping the shadow locked down. The smile he produces is not an expression of joy. It is the facial contortion required to hold the mask in place. It is a sign of immense psychological effort. We are dissecting the universal experience of men navigating the modern social contract. Tell us, where are you witnessing this dynamic right now? From what city are you joining us in this exploration of the collective unconscious? The core difference between the single man's smile and the married man's pretense lies in the management of psychic tension. The single man, because his life is inherently less structured by external obligation, experiences lower psychic tension. His energy is available for external pursuits, self-development, or simple enjoyment. The married man, conversely, experiences profound psychic tension. His energy is fundamentally defensive. It is used to patrol the borders of the persona, to ensure no leaks, no cracks, and no shadow elements escape into public view. This constant internal conflict explains the often cited phenomena of the burned-out husband, not burned out by work alone, but by the relentless job of pretending. His emotional landscape becomes arid. He develops neuroses, often manifesting as quiet depression, cynicism, or compulsive behaviors designed to numb the internal resistance, like excessive drinking, obsessive workaholism, or endless consumption of media. The tragedy of the married man's pretense is that it is often rooted in a noble error. He believes he is sacrificing his authenticity for the benefit of his family, a heroic archetype. But Jung would argue that a man cannot give what he does not possess. A man who has abandoned his self cannot give his family a whole father or a whole husband. He can only give them a highly specialized, emotionally restricted role. His children, highly attuned to emotional authenticity, sense the lie, even if they cannot articulate it. His partner feels the distance, the emotional unavailability, even if his external behavior is dutiful. This leads to the paradoxical outcome. The harder the married man pretends, the more emotionally isolated he becomes, thereby undermining the very relationships he sought to protect through his sacrifice. He stands in the center of his family, surrounded by people he loves and provides for. Yet he feels profoundly alone because no one truly knows the man behind the persona, not even himself, as the separation between ego and shadow has become so complete. Now, consider the single man's smile again. It is a sign of psychological integration, or at least the potential for easier integration. He is not forced by the heavy hand of social prescription to abandon key parts of his nature. If he feels a need for solitude, he takes it. If he feels an urge for adventure, he pursues it. His life is less prescribed and more discovered. His authenticity, his true nature, is his default setting, not a luxury he must fight for. The psychological danger for the single man is different. He risks eternal adolescence. the puer aeternus archetype unbound by responsibility, who finds genuine commitment terrifying because it threatens the pristine, unburdened self. But even in this danger, the smile remains genuine, reflective of an internal world that, while possibly immature, is at least coherent. The married man, on the other hand, lives in a state of chronic, low-grade dissociation. He observes his own life as if watching a play in which he is the lead actor. He knows the lines, he hits the marks, he delivers the performance expected by the audience, but the performance is disconnected from the soul of the actor. His feelings are dulled, his creativity is stunted, and his ability to experience genuine, spontaneous joy is compromised. He is functioning, succeeding by societal metrics, but failing by the metric of the soul's vitality. This is the core burden of the pretender, the relentless maintenance of an unsustainable lie. The longer the pretense continues, the greater the pressure on the psychic structure. Jung noted that neurosis is the suffering of a soul that has not found itself. In the context of the pretending married man, this neurosis manifests as the gnawing sense of what if, or the sudden, terrifying eruption of the repressed shadow during a midlife crisis. The single man smiles because his what if is still an active possibility. His future remains open-ended, an unwritten manuscript. The married man pretends because his manuscript is largely finished, bound by the expectations set decades ago, and the realization that he may have sealed his fate prematurely, or worse, sealed his fate based on society's demands rather than his soul's true calling, is too terrifying to face without a rigid protective smile. The profound irony is that the married man often seeks validation for his pretense from the very people he is trying to impress, his peers. He needs their acknowledgement that his sacrifice is noble, that his material success is earned, and that his life is enviable. This need for external validation confirms his internal lack of fulfillment. The single man, requiring less external validation, can find his worth intrinsically in the direct experience of his life, unfiltered by the need to conform to a universal standard of success. The weight of the unlived life becomes the heaviest burden. For the married man, every opportunity he passed up, every spontaneous passion he crushed, every adventure he deferred in the name of stability, transforms into leaden weight on his spirit. This weight is what pulls the corners of his mouth tight, making his smile a grimace of endurance rather than an expression of delight. He is fundamentally operating at half power, spending the majority of his psychic energy not on living, but on maintaining the illusion of having lived correctly. We see this everywhere. The quiet desperation in the eyes of men at weekend barbecues, the sudden burst of irrational anger over minor infractions, the inability to connect deeply, even with those closest to them. These are not character flaws. They are symptoms of the persona's tyranny. The persona, initially built for protection, has become a psychological cage. The single man, meanwhile, is still facing the inherent existential challenges of freedom, but his challenges are active, not reactive. He battles the world, not his own soul. His struggle is external, leading to growth, while the married man's struggle is internal, often leading only to stasis and rigidity. We are moving toward the final question. Is this pretense inevitable? Is there a path for the married man to reclaim his authenticity without shattering his world? That dramatic answer awaits us. But first, we must acknowledge the deep psychological traps that necessitate this elaborate performance. The realization that one's life has been spent maintaining an image is profoundly destabilizing. It is the moment the actor forgets his lines because he realizes the entire script is flawed. This vulnerability is exactly what the pretending man fears most, the total exposure of his fragile foundation. And until he can accept that vulnerability, until he can strategically, slowly, and safely dismantle the oppressive structure of the persona, he will remain trapped in the act, forced to smile while the truth screams silently beneath the mask. This exploration penetrates the deepest layers of male psychology, offering insight into behaviors we see every single day. This is the truth that requires courage to face. We need to hear your voice in this conversation. Affirm your commitment to truth by sharing this phrase in the comments right now. I choose the smile. By sharing that affirmation, you join a community dedicated to authenticity and psychological strength. Now, empower this movement. Smash the like button and subscribe to ensure you continue to receive these insights that redefine modern manhood. You owe it to your own self-development to stay connected to the truth. The deep excavation of the pretending man's dilemma demands a powerful conclusion, a path forward, and a confrontation with the true Jungian prescription for masculine fulfillment. In our final part, we analyze the ultimate consequences of this pretense and reveal the unexpected path to genuine integrated strength for every man, regardless of his status. You will not want to miss the shocking revelation about the secret cost of conformity. It's coming next. There is a moment in every man's life, usually silent, often occurring in the dead of night, when the mask he has worn for years begins to suffocate him. It is not the pressure of the world that breaks him, but the pressure of the persona he constructed, a facade of the good husband, the stable provider, the responsible citizen. Carl Jung observed this slow psychological strangulation, this fatal discrepancy between what a man is compelled to appear and what he fundamentally knows himself to be. The smile of the single man, that light, almost reckless expression of self-possession, haunts the married man who pretends because that smile represents the unlived life, the vast ocean of potential, shadow, and desire. He consciously locked away the moment he chose the conventional path. The climax of this psychological drama, the final act of this three-part tragedy, is not divorce or infidelity. It is the inevitable collision between the repressed self and the constructed image. It is the moment the shadow bursts through the walls of the persona. This phenomenon is not rare. It is endemic to the psychological landscape of modern man. The married man, attempting to maintain the illusion of seamless domesticity and moral conformity, unknowingly compresses his own vitality. He uses immense psychic energy daily, not to accomplish real tasks but simply to keep the lid sealed on his true impulses. He ignores the aggressive, the sensual, the unpredictable, the artistic, or the purely selfish parts of himself that society, and by extension his marriage, seem to forbid. But the shadow does not disappear. It merely gathers strength in the dark. It becomes dense, powerful, and deeply charged with the energy of the unlived life. And when it finally erupts, it is rarely subtle. It manifests as the dramatic, inexplicable impulse that destroys years of careful stability. The sudden, passionate affair with a woman completely opposite to his wife. The instantaneous abandonment of a profitable career for a vague, impossible dream. The descent into secret, often destructive addictions. This is not rebellion. This is the soul's desperate, clumsy attempt to retrieve the lost key to life. Before we dive into the final necessary confrontation with the self, let the weight of this struggle settle into your immediate reality. Tell us now, right here, where this deep reflection finds you. Share the name of the city you are watching from. Where is this internal conflict currently unfolding? The crucial error, Jung insisted, is the belief that the shadow is something to be eliminated. The man who pretends attempts to kill the shadow, believing that its elimination will lead to peace. But the shadow is not evil. It is the undeveloped personality, the necessary complement to the light. The single man often smiles because he is still in the process of discovery, still negotiating with his own darkness, still accepting the breadth of his capacity for both creation and destruction. The married man who pretends has stopped this negotiation. He has chosen a limited definition of self and tries to force reality to match it. The definitive conclusion, therefore, is that the married man must stop pretending not by destroying his persona, but by integrating his shadow. This is the arduous, terrifying process of individuation, the ultimate acceptance of one's total self, flaws and all. Integration means bringing the raw, vital energy of the repressed parts of himself back into the conscious life, and most importantly, into the marriage. This requires an almost unbearable level of psychological honesty. It means acknowledging to his partner and to himself that the perfect man she married was an incomplete performance. It means accepting that the aggression he denied, the ambition he curtailed, or the sensuality he relegated to fantasy must now find a conscious, contained, and constructive outlet. This is terrifying because the marriage was often founded on the shared agreement that this persona, the predictable, safe, pretend man, was the reality. To introduce the shadow is to introduce complexity, darkness, and a frightening unpredictability into a system built for comfort and safety. The tragedy deepens when the wife, having also constructed her own persona, the loyal wife, the perfect mother, resists this change fiercely. She is confronted not just by her husband's repressed self, but by the shattering of her own life structure. She married a fortress, and now the foundation is cracking as the real man fights to emerge. Jung noted that many marriages fail at this point of integration, not because the couple stops loving each other, but because they prioritize the comfort of the lie over the pain of the truth. They prefer the security of two incomplete people living side by side to the difficult co-creation of two whole, complex, and potentially dangerous individuals. The man who truly seeks to stop pretending and maintain his bond must transform the very nature of his marriage. It must evolve from a societal contract designed for mutual defense and stability into what Jung termed a container for transformation. This container must be sturdy enough to hold two whole, developing souls, including their respective shadows. The man must learn to channel the energy of the repressed shadow, the recklessness of the single man's smile, into the marriage itself. If he repressed his adventurous side, he must bring measured risk into their joint life. If he repressed his passion, he must bring that intensity back to their connection, not just their bedroom. The key is consciousness. The single man's smile is often unconscious, simply the result of freedom. The truly integrated married man's smile is conscious. It is the quiet, profound joy of knowing he is finally living authentically, even within the confines of commitment. The cost of failure is the slow, grinding death of the soul, while the body continues to operate the routines of life. The man who maintains the pretense into old age becomes rigid, bitter, and filled with neurotic resentment. The persona, once a protective mask, becomes an iron cage. He may have all the trappings of success, the marriage, the house, the grandchildren, but he lacks the one thing the smiling single man possesses: self-ownership. He dies a stranger to himself, his tombstone commemorating the persona he became, not the man he was supposed to be. This is Jung's most terrifying indictment, that we sacrifice our soul for a comfortable, socially acceptable identity, only to discover at the end that the comfort was merely an anesthetic against the pain of the unlived life. The definitive conclusion is a paradox. The married man must become psychologically single within the marriage. He must reclaim his sovereign self, take responsibility for his own totality, including his shadow, and refuse to let the marital contract dictate his psychological development. His commitment shifts from performing a role for his wife and society to the rigorous commitment of becoming fully himself. The marriage either accommodates this newly honest, often challenging self, or it dissolves. But either outcome is superior to the continuation of the pretense. If the marriage survives this honesty, it becomes a powerful, real union, free from the neurotic undercurrents of the repressed self. If it ends, the man walks away not broken, but whole, finally possessing the genuine, earned smile of a man who has chosen truth over comfort. He stops pretending because the psychological cost of the lie has finally exceeded the social cost of the truth. This profound reorientation from the comfort of the persona to the rigor of the self is not an overnight choice. It is a declaration of war against the complacency of decades. It is the moment when the man decides that his ultimate loyalty belongs to the deep voice of his soul, and not to the fleeting approval of the external world. He understands that genuine strength, the kind that sustains a deep relationship, does not come from avoiding conflict, but from fearlessly bringing his whole self, light and dark, to the table. The man who stops pretending stops running from his shadow, and realizes that the authenticity he envied in the single man was not dependent on external freedom, but on internal ownership. That is the true climax of the Jungian journey, the realization that the smile of self-acceptance is the only thing capable of shattering the chains of the golden cage. Now, pause and absorb the weight of this understanding. This journey of integration, the choice to drop the persona and embrace the shadow, defines the second half of life. It requires courage that surpasses physical bravery. It requires psychological commitment. You are deciding right now, in this moment, which path you will take, the path of comfortable pretense or the path of painful, necessary truth. I want you to make a tangible commitment to that difficult truth. Below, in the comments, demonstrate your resolve. Affirm your position with a simple, powerful declaration that signifies the beginning of this psychological honesty. Write this in the comments. The shadow is the path to authenticity. By sharing this phrase, you publicly declare your commitment to the most difficult of human tasks, accepting your totality. And since you have arrived at this definitive conclusion, since you recognize the gravity of this psychological battle, do not risk losing the path forward. Secure your access to the next stages of deep philosophical and psychological insight. Hit the like button on this video right now as a down payment on your own commitment to growth. Click subscribe and turn on notifications because you deserve to be part of this community of men who refuse to live small, convenient lives. Your continued development is guaranteed when you choose to surround yourself with minds focused on depth and truth. You have seen the cost of pretending and the reward of integration, but the integration of the self is only the beginning. The next profound exploration will uncover the essential, almost primal secret of lasting influence, the hidden psychological force that determines whether men follow you out of respect or merely out of obligation. We will delve into the nature of true gravity, not what makes a man impressive, but what makes him truly necessary. Do not miss this essential next step in understanding the architecture of a powerful, authentic life. We will see you there, ready for the next level of brutal self-awareness.